And welcome to another episode of Go Time here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Grant Sashray, one of the co-hosts here on LSU at the Voice of College Football Network. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, click the bell for all notifications regarding to future videos being uploaded, and of course, our live show, which we broadcast every Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time. But we're not talking about college football today. We here talking about the big matchup between LSU and West Virginia at the Box in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Right now, we are joined here by Alex Day, one of the guys over there at College Baseball Central, an LSU fan himself, and knows a whole lot about both teams. But Alex, welcome to the podcast, and then also welcome back home. You're going to be coming back to Baton Rouge for the Super Regional. So
Absolutely, Grant. Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm always down to talk some LSU baseball, especially when it's postseason. We got Super Regionals coming up, man. It's going to be an awesome few weeks.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, the last time you saw me, I actually had hair, so it's a little change of pace. That's how long it's been. But man, Alex, just what are your overall thoughts? Not just about this regional, but just not the Super Regional, but just really the postseason as a whole. There's been a lot of craziness happening. Of course, Texas San Antonio upset Texas to go to their very first Super Regional in the program's history. Murray State survived to upset Ole Miss. Vanderbilt got eliminated by Wright State. I mean, just been a lot of craziness so far in the regionals, and that's not including LSU almost losing against Little Rock, who, by the way, had a losing record going into postseason play.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about baseball, man, is anybody can beat anybody any given day. It's not like football. I mean, in football, Wright State is never winning anything of significance, in football. Little Rock is never going to be toe-to-toe with LSU. But in baseball, that kind of stuff can happen, and it's wild. And it's been a wild year. I mean, just when you look at, in the regionals, the first after the first game of the regionals, 4-1 seeds lost to 4 seeds, in the first day of the regionals. I mean, that's the most 1 seeds you've had lose after the first game since 2008. It's been a wild year. I mean, and then, you look at, Murray State, a 4 seed winning a regional. I mean, UTSA beating Texas, which if you just say it's UTSA beating Texas, like that sounds crazy, out of this world. But when you really look at this UTSA team, that's a really good baseball team. Yeah. I actually think they're going to go into UCLA and win that Super and make it to Omaha. I mean, that's a really good team. So there's no, on paper, like that looks really bad for Texas, but it's, it may not be as bad as it looks on the surface.
Well, the thing is, though, it doesn't look that bad if you actually look at UTSA as a team. I mean, that's a very good team. They're the Conference USA champions, if I'm correct. They've won over 45 games. But the thing is, though, is that it's Texas, right? That is the flagship university of the state of Texas. They have a rich baseball tradition. So for them to lose against UTSA, they consider that sacrilege. It'll almost be like, and you know this, it'll be like LSU losing against UL Lafayette. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. Even though UL Lafayette has some great teams at some period of time, sometimes they have a really, really good team. But LSU, they don't want to lose against UL Lafayette. And I'm pretty sure the Longhorn fans don't want to lose against Texas San Antonio.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true. I mean, yeah, I think LSU to ULL is a pretty apt comparison, to Texas and UTSA, because ULL, they'll pop some really good teams every once in a while, but yeah, I mean, that's a good comparison. But yeah, the regionals have been wild, and the Supers, when you just look at all the SEC teams that lost, you had 13 teams making it to the tournament, and then you've only got a handful left in the tournament. And it's kind of crazy now. There's all these narratives about how SEC is overrated and all this stuff. And, maybe we can have that discussion, but just because a team loses in the tournament doesn't mean they weren't deserving of being there in the first place.
Right. And I think it's also because it just kind of stems over from football, right? And like in my opinion, SEC baseball was way more dominant than football, just because if you look at baseball, it is a regional sport, right? For football, they were dominant, but at the same time, it's like, they were dominant this is before the NIL, this is before the transfer portal. So a lot of times, a great example would be Alabama. They're hogging all the best guys. And really also football is a little bit more of a predictable sport. Baseball is unpredictable. And the fact that the SEC has dominated college baseball for as long as it has is actually pretty incredible because, as you know, baseball is a hugely unpredictable sport. It is, in my opinion, the only sport that's really based off of probability because you just don't know because the ball could be pitched the right way and it could be an awkward swing, but if it hits the right spot in the bat, that's a base hit.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird quirks about baseball. And you look at the 13 teams that got in, only a handful left. It's just kind of one of those things, man. So that's just the way the ball bounces sometimes.
Yeah, and really because of all those teams losing, especially in the SEC, I believe right now they only have 5 SEC teams right now. And really, you could potentially have you can still have 4 in Omaha because Tennessee, Arkansas play each other, so that's going to knock one of those teams out. So there could be as many as 4 SEC teams in Omaha. And really, I mean, the chances aren't looking as great because a lot of them have tough matchups, but a lot of things can happen. I mean, of course, 4 teams can make it to Omaha like we've seen in the past, or it could be as many, it could be as many as 2 or even 1. But there's going to be 1 regardless. But it'll be really interesting to see if there's going to be at least 4 because I mean, right now it's just not looking so great. But because of all these teams getting eliminated, right now LSU, despite them kind of looking suspect at sometimes during the second half of the year, Vegas has them as the favorites to win the whole thing, to win it, not only the Super Regional, but advance to Omaha and then win it there. So what are your feelings about LSU being the favorite? And do you think they can do it?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think they can do it. As far as being the favorite, I think what that really boils down to is that if you look at Arkansas is right next to LSU, right below LSU in the odds market. And what I think that speaks to more is that Arkansas has a tougher road to get to Omaha in playing Tennessee than LSU does playing West Virginia. And so you can't win the whole thing if you don't win the Super Regional. So, I think that's why LSU has, is like a tick above Arkansas in as far as the odds to win the whole thing. Because I think Arkansas is arguably the most complete team in the field, in the field that's left and in the country, like period, the most complete team. When you just look at the depth of the pitching staff and the lineup, how they play defense, just the whole team is pretty well stacked. So I think they would be the favorites if they weren't playing Tennessee to be in the Supers. But as far as LSU being the favorite, yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense because I think when you look at their 1-2 punch with Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, it is the best 1-2 punch in the country. And at this point, I don't really think there's a good argument for anyone else. There are other good 1-2 punches, and LSU is going to face another pretty good 1-2 punch that West Virginia has this weekend, but they're not Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson. Like those two are 2 legit aces. And we've seen teams ride 2 legit aces to championships. I mean, if you look at Ole Miss in 22, they rode DeLucia and Hunter Elliott to a national championship. They rode those 2 guys and with a good but not great offense, but Tim Elko and then those 2 pitchers, and Ole Miss is a national champion. And I think LSU can follow a similar path to get there. Some of some of what we saw in the regionals from the bullpen kind of gives me a little concern, particularly Zach Cowan, because he's had several outings in a row where it has not gone well for him. And some of his pitches just don't look as sharp as they did earlier in the season, specifically that changeup. Changeup was such a weapon for him, and it just doesn't look the same as it did early in the season. So there's a little bit of concern there, but certainly the talent is absolutely there. And even on the offense, which has been kind of hit and miss, especially away from the box. And so when you look at going to Omaha, being away from the box, LSU's offense hasn't performed great, but Anthony Ianson and Kane Anderson give you an opportunity to win every game that they pitch in.
Right. Before we get into more LSU baseball talk, let's go over. Well, not go over, but I'm just going to list some of the super regionals going on. So Louisville will be hosting Miami in their super regional. That will take place tomorrow. So the games on the left, I'm assuming they're all going to take place on Friday. And all the games on the right are taking place on Saturday. But Louisville, Miami, they play tomorrow. Florida State, Oregon State. That should be a very interesting one. And I believe is Florida State hosting that one, or is Oregon State?
Oregon State. That one's in Corvallis.
Okay, gotcha. So that should be a very interesting one. Two college baseball blue bloods right there. North Carolina and Arizona. They will take on each other. Those are two very good teams. Of course, North Carolina was the team that beat LSU in the regional last year in Chapel Hill, and of course, Arizona was Jay's last stop before taking the LSU job. Of course, and then you have Auburn and Coastal Carolina. That should be a great one. Of course, our great buddy, Jake McKeever, was a part of a very controversial podcast moment where he wanted us to see Unfiltered, and I think Chris Phillips caused a huge Twitter storm with Coastal Carolina fans. It was really funny, but that should be a great one. Coastal Carolina has been one of the best mid-major programs in college baseball over the last 10 years. Of course, they're the ones that upset LSU, most famously at the box against Omaha. And, of course, they won the whole thing. Who did they beat in the final? A Jay Johnson-led Arizona team. So that's a fun fact for you. And, of course, Auburn, they're the fourth overall seed here in the tournament. And they're Arkansas is the highest seed left, but Auburn's right there at number 4, 41-18. That should be a very interesting one. Go back up here. You got Texas San Antonio, UCLA. Alex has Texas San Antonio beating UCLA in the super regional events of Omaha. Two very good teams. When was the last time UCLA went to the Omaha? Alex, you happen to know off the top of your head?
I think it was when they had Cole and Bauer, which would have been like 2015, I think, 2014, somewhere in there. I'd have to look back, but I think it was that Trevor Bauer, Garrett Cole team.
Yeah.
Was the last time they were in Omaha.
Yeah, it's been that long ago. I think it was like, what? Yeah, when was the last time UCLA even went that far? It's been a little while, so it's an opportunity for them to go to the College World Series for the first time since 2013, which was when they won it. Murray State, which is kind of the Cinderella story so far throughout the postseason, they upset Ole Miss to advantage to their first super regional program history. They will take on Duke in Durham. Duke has been kind of knocking on the door for a little while now, and they are very close to reaching Omaha. But I think the Racers have something to say. And, of course, we got LSU and West Virginia. We're about to talk about that in a little bit. And then, of course, you got Tennessee, the bad boys of college baseball, going up against Arkansas. And this is always kind of a tense game. Tony Vitello was Dave Van Horn's protege. They were both at Arkansas together. He leaves Arkansas to go to Tennessee. Well, I think he left for Missouri, then Tennessee, or maybe vice versa. And then, of course, builds up a national powerhouse in Knoxville. That should be a very good one, but and really might be the most intriguing one. But really, I think we're all here to talk about the LSU West Virginia matchup, Alex. And one of the biggest aspects to me, one of the things that stands out the most to me about LSU so far is how well they've been hitting the ball. We know how well they hit the ball in Alex box, but they've been kind of inconsistent in terms of the hitting, whether they're at home and especially at away. But the last 4 games, they've had 10 or more hits. Even in the game that they lost against Little Rock, they actually out-hit Little Rock 11-8. It was just that the pitching staff couldn't get the ball across the plate. But overall, their offense has seemed to find its rhythm back again. Jared Jones had a huge slump. He actually hit a huge home run late in the game, so hopefully he gets back into that groove they had experienced earlier this season. But how do you think LSU's bats will go up against a solid, star rotation, really also a solid bullpen that West Virginia has.
Yeah, it would be interesting. West Virginia does have, one really good, first team All Big 12, starter on Friday night. He was a D2 guy last year, came to West Virginia and just kind of exploded. And it's the second year in a row that West Virginia has had a Friday night guy come from the D2 ranks. And he's been really good. He's a legit ace. But LSU has had some success against legit aces. I mean, you look at, they had some pretty good success against, Liam Doyle, or you look at what they did against Jared Spencer, and some of the legit aces they've faced in the SEC, and they've performed pretty well. I think you saw some good signs from Jared Jones. I think maybe having him lower in the lineup, maybe put a little bit less pressure on him. Maybe he can relax a little bit more, not press so much at the plate, because it really felt like he's been pressing for a while at the plate. And then you look at Ethan Fry in the 2-hole that, when Jay Johnson moved him up there, and he was on base 5 times. He went 4 for 4 with a home run. I mean, he was all everything, in that regional final. And I'm personally just a huge fan of Ethan Fry. I think he is a unicorn in college baseball these days. He didn't play much his first 2 years. Yeah, last year was kind of had to do more with injury than it did, just the talent or whatever. But, you see those kind of guys leave school all the time, leave where they're at. But this is a guy, Ethan Fry is the type of guy that this LSU baseball program has been built on over the years. He's just another in a long line of Louisiana kids that grew up bleeding purple and gold, and then coming into LSU, maybe not starting right away, but developing. You look at guys like Gavin Dugas, Cade Beloso, kind of more recently, but then you can go back and find all kinds of guys like that, right? You think of like Bo Jordan, or even further back than that, Mikey Mott. Well, Mikey Mott's not necessarily a great example because he was really impactful as a freshman.
Yeah.
But just these guys that just love LSU and come to LSU and don't want to go anywhere else and want to make a name for themselves at LSU. And Ethan Fry has really done that. And I'm just the biggest fan of his, and I love seeing his success. And I hope he comes back next year. He's going to have a decision to make. His draft stock is kind of, some scouts I've talked to have kind of been like, I don't see a team paying him any sort of big money or anything like that, because he's a DH. Like, he's a right-handed DH right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so, who's power first? He's power over hit right now. And so just kind of, power first right-handed bats are kind of, I don't want to say a dime a dozen, but like there's a lot of those kind of guys. I mean, Jared Jones is another one of those same guys on LSU's lineup who, didn't get big money last year and came back to school. And so I think, you got a decent shot of getting Ethan Fry back next year. Now, if he keeps mashing the way he is, it may not matter, but somebody will find a place for him on the field, but we'll figure it out. We'll see how that goes. We still got some time for all that, but yeah, just this lineup. And then, Stephen Milam has gotten hot. His postseason prowess, has been well documented at this point. I mean, I know he's only a sophomore, but, last year, what he did in the postseason, and then this year he's been, he was really kind of slumping pretty hard coming into the postseason, but he has really turned it on since the SEC tournament. So I think this lineup is, shaping up to be really good, even against some really good top line arms that West Virginia will roll out there.
Yeah, speaking of, I'm glad you mentioned Ethan Fry. That's actually going to be my next question. But Ethan Fry has just been awesome so far. And, I think that the one thing that makes me hopeful that he'll come back is because really this is, it's really his first opportunity to be on the field. The last year, the first year, of course, he was a freshman, and we all know how stacked that team was. And then last year, it's been well documented that he suffered some injuries throughout the course of the year. And that was the first time actually being back on the baseball field. So I think, and especially considering his skill set, he's really right now only a DH. I think the fact that he is only a DH at this moment, I think lets me believe that he might come back, but it depends on the money, right? I think that's really that's the biggest benefactor, like who gets drafted, like who declares for the draft, because we've seen in years past where guys may skip up on the MLB draft because they're not getting paid a whole lot, right? That's different between NFL and NBA, because NFL and NBA is based off of where you get drafted, not based off of how much you sign. For anybody who doesn't know how the MLB draft works, but I want to talk about the what happened.
Halliburton just hit a game winner again. Just on Twitter, Halliburton just hit a game winner again. I'm sorry to interrupt. He just hit a game winner again.
Are you serious?
He's 13 for 15 and go ahead of game-winning buckets in the playoffs.
Yeah, sorry. So I was like, what is going on? Why is my little brother reactive? Like, what happened? And Tyrese Halliburton, NBA Finals, Tyrese Halliburton hit a game-winning three. But back to baseball. I was like, what's going on? Like, but back to I usually pretty even kill when this stuff happens, but he started reacting like, what is going on? But anyway, that Thunder were up huge, by the way, late in the game. But going back to baseball, yeah, LSU's going up against West Virginia. I think that's been I think I've already said that a bunch of times already, and I think I'm gonna keep reminding you that we're going up against West Virginia. But one of the things about West Virginia, though, is that I know, like, if you look at their strength of schedule, it isn't really the best. I mean, they actually had a very favorable Big 12 schedule compared to some other teams in the Big 12, like Arizona and TCU. And the good teams they did play, like, for example, Arizona, they lost 3 of their 4 games. But if you look at the schedule, they're actually better on the road than they're at home. Now, of course, I don't think they've experienced an environment like the box yet. But they're 24-5 on the road, which is better than the home record, which is 17-7. They averaged, 7.5 runs per game on the road, where if you played every single game on the road, that would be in the top 40 nationally. And they've won 6 of their 7 away series, and not to mention they swept the field in the Clemson regional, and of course they beat Clemson. Well, they beat Clemson, right? One of the games I know they beat Clemson. Yeah, they beat Clemson, and then of course they beat Kentucky twice to advance to the Mariners Super Regional. But for a team like West Virginia, like, do you think that despite their away record, how well do you think they'll fare in a place like the Box, which is historically known, whether it's the old or the new Box, as a very tough place to play, especially when you get in the postseason?
Yeah, when you look at, Clemson is a really good environment too. I mean, it's not the Box. I mean, nowhere's the Alex Box in postseason, but Clemson does have a really good environment. Like, I don't know if you watched that series, but those fans really get after it. So, I don't think that necessarily they're going to be initially kind of intimidated by the Box, by the aura of the Box. I think they're going to come in here with a lot of confidence. And they should. I mean, they've performed really well. They should come in here with a lot of confidence. But the Box does do weird things to teams when they get in here sometimes. And so that they'll have to navigate that. But I think that they're well prepared as they can be, for this environment. And when you look at them as a team, they're kind of, they don't hit a ton of home runs. I think somewhere around 50 or 55 home runs. They only have one guy has double-digit home runs, and he's at 10 on the season. So, but they've got over 100 stolen bases. They've got 4 different guys that have at least 10 stolen bases on the season. So they're a get them on, get them over, get them in type of offense. And then in the regional, I think that game against Kentucky, or just in the regional in general, they hit a ton of singles. They drew a lot of walks, had a ton of singles, and they're going to sack bunt guys over. So they're going to make you work as a pitching staff, and they're going to just be death by 1,000 paper cuts offensively. So the biggest thing is LSU has to limit the base runners, which means limit the walks. You limit the walks and don't let them run their offense, then that's the key to success. I mean, it's easy to say that. I mean, that's the key to success. Yes, keep runners off the base pass, and yeah, you're probably going to win most games. It's easy to say, but like, that's just kind of how they run their offense. They're going to stress you on defense. But I think that really sets up pretty well for LSU, because, I mean, first of all, they're a strikeout team. They lead the SEC in strikeouts. and they're top 5 nationally in strikeouts. So they're going to strike guys out. And then, the walks are just going to be, you're just going to have to limit them because walks happen. This LSU pitching staff has shown they're going to give up walks. So you just got to limit the walks. But this LSU defense has been really, really good. I mean, you only have, I think now 10 errors between your third base, shortstop, second base combined. I mean, there's the last few years, I mean, your shortstop alone had that many errors in the season when you look at both Braswell and Thompson before him. So, big improvement there. And I think, Ben McDonald said it several times on the broadcast this weekend and has said it several times over the course of the season, that this is one of the best fielding teams. This is the best fielding team Jay Johnson has put out there. And it's one of the best in the last 10 years. So this is a really good defensive team. So I think having a team like West Virginia that's going to stress you on defense doesn't worry me as much as it did maybe in past years.
Oh yeah, definitely. And just West Virginia, because they're not a power hitting team. I believe they've only hit 55 home runs all year. I saw something like that. And one guy, of course, that was Kyle West, who's hit 10 home runs. But they do a great job of getting on base. They do a great job of base running. Like you said, they're one of the best teams that steal bases. Actually, so Kyle West has an on-base percentage of 500. So he gets on base half of the time. So these guys are really disciplined. They don't strike a whole lot. They force you to walk them. And that will be very key for LSU's bullpen because we know Ianson and Anderson are going to do their job on the mound. They've done a great job throughout the whole season, but especially in the second half of the season. But the bullpen, outside maybe of a couple of guys, have had a hard time delivering. And you saw that against Little Rock where LSU walked 11 batters. They walked more batters than they allowed hits, which is pretty shocking. And also because they walked so many batters, it allowed them to get guys on base, and that's how they scored runs. You can't do that against a team like West Virginia, as I said, because they're an excellent base running team, and that's how they get the runs. It's through just hitting the ball and getting guys on base, and then scoring runs when there's guys getting on base.
Yeah, they're going to manufacture runs, right? They're going to get them on, get them over, get them in. They have a ton of sack bunts on the season, so you're going to see sack bunts. And you just got to be able to make the play when it's there to be made. And then, like you said, limit the base runners, limit the walks. And I think, that LSU, can really, maybe run away with it. I don't know if maybe not run away with it, but that's really going to be the formula.
Yeah, definitely. And how confident are you with LSU's bullpen? Just given the fact that outside Casey Evans, we know he can pitch very well. He's pitched all well all season, maybe outside of a couple of starts. Then on top of that, Cooper Williams showed that he could pitch at a high level in a very stressful situation. So that will be key because 3 of West Virginia's best batters are left-handed. So we know we might see Cooper Williams once again this weekend. But Zach Cowan has been a little bit of a dud on the mound the last couple weeks, despite he's had a great season all year, but just these last few weeks, he just hasn't gotten together on the mound. And then on top of that, you really haven't found, but maybe outside Cooper Williams, Maverick Rizzi, and Casey Evans, you haven't found a couple more guys that could get the job done on the mound. So do you feel confident in LSU's bullpen this weekend?
Yeah, I think they've really, there's a formula there, right, where you get Anderson and Ianson to go deep into a game, and I think you still I'm concerned about Zach Cowan, but Jay Johnson's absolutely going to run Zach Cowan back out there. Probably if there's a lead, if it's the 8th inning and LSU has a lead and Cade Anderson's at 115 pitches or whatever, then I can almost guarantee you Casey Evans is going to be coming out of the pen, or not Casey Evans. Sorry. Zach Cowan is going to be coming out of the pen on Saturday night. If there's a lead in the 8th inning, you could pretty much book it. I know he hasn't been great the last 3 outings, but that's through 90% of the season, he's been the dude out of the pen. So you're going to keep rolling with that guy. Now, and then how they use Case and Evans is going to be interesting because I can guarantee you in game 2, if there's a lead late, they're going to throw Case and Evans. If it's within, even if they're down a run, they may still throw Case and Evans out there if they're, late in the game, and not save him to be your third starter. But then if you look at, other guys, say like a Jacob Myers, for example. Jacob Myers, he was not good against Little Rock. Just call it like it is. He was not good. He couldn't get the ball over the plate. But if you look at the previous 7 outings he had before that, he had been awesome. So I think with Jacob Myers, I think he's still a guy that I think can do it. He's shown he can do it through a long, through several, outings in a row. So I think I'm hoping that I'm not going to live to, regret these words, but I think you're still confident in Jacob Myers that he can go out there and get you, some outs. And if you need a strikeout, that's, if it's late in the game and you're not quite ready to throw Case and Evans out there or Zach Cowan, but you need a strikeout, that's a guy I'm totally fine with seeing run out there. Chase Shores is another one that had put together some really good outings and then just had a dud against Little Rock. So I think he's another guy that's going to get an opportunity. And obviously you mentioned Cooper Williams. He earned himself another opportunity with the way he pitched. He gave you a chance in that first game, or I guess technically the second game against Little Rock. Gave you 3 2/3 of shutout ball. So he earned another opportunity. So that's definitely a guy you're gonna see come out of the pen. DJ Primo, you might see, I don't know, maybe as a situational lefty, in a matchup type situation. I think Connor Ware, again, if DJ Primo and Cooper Williams have already pitched, then maybe you see Connor Ware come out there in a situational lefty situation. But, I think really the guy, and Jaden Newt is another guy who against Little Rock, he actually didn't pitch terribly. He just got hit, which is not really characteristic of him. He was still 60% strikes in that outing against Little Rock. So Jaden Newt, I think, is another guy that you still have some confidence in, and another guy that you'll see. So I think, outside of obviously Cowan and Evans, you're still gonna ride with those two guys, and Ianson and Anderson. But I think you still have Newt, Shores, Myers, Williams as kind of your main 4 other guys that you can still roll out there and feel reasonably confident in.
Yeah, man, I got a couple more questions for you. I'm going to start off with West Virginia star rotation. I mean, we've talked a little bit. We've talked before about, and also in the show about Ianson and Anderson, how they are the best pitching duo in the country. I mean, the stats back it up. They've been consistent all throughout the season, especially in the second half of the season, where they're having multiple 10 or more strikeout games. But West Virginia also has a solid starting rotation as well. Griffin Kern will take the first will pitch in the first game of the Super Regional. He's their Saturday night starter. He actually is a transfer from Quincy University, which is a small Catholic school in Illinois. By the way, it's a D2 school, so we made a huge jump up to West Virginia. He's 5-3 on the year with the 3.13 ERA, 100 strikeouts, which leads the team. He has a weird, chaotic kind of windup. It's pretty funky, but it works, right? Because he's got 100 strikeouts and he's 5-3 on the year and a 3.13 ERA. And he's been consistent all year. He's had at most 4 runs all season, which he's done twice, which is actually now a whole lot of runs. And he has the ability to go the distance. The last 3 games, he has averaged 124.6 pitches. And in his last start, threw 118. And that last pitch, by the way, went 92 miles per hour. So he has great ability there. And, of course, you also have to talk about Jack Cartsonas, who I'll actually get to see in person because I'll be there for game 2, not game 1. Say he's your typical Sunday night starter. He has an awesome Fu Manchu mustache. I have to mention that. transferred in from Kent State. He was a reliever up until mid-April before he became a part of the starting rotation. 95-mile-per-hour fastball, upper 80s in the changeup, 63 on the year with the 2.94 ERA, and he has 76 strikeouts. So what can you tell us about those two guys and what challenges they may bring to LSU's batting lineup?
Yeah, certainly. I'm glad you mentioned Cartonis' mustache, because if you didn't, I was gonna. Because that is, I remember I turned on the Clemson game, the Clemson West Virginia game, and I saw that mustache, and I was just like, oh my god, this dude is awesome. Immediately. So, but yeah, so Griffin Kern is a guy that, like you mentioned, he's got a 95 inning pitch with 100 strikeouts. So he's gonna strike people out. He's only got 29 walks to go along with those 100 strikeouts. So he doesn't walk a ton of guys. He strikes a ton of guys out. He's got 237 batting average against. So he is a legit ace, and he's gonna present kind of some problems. And he's a lefty, so he's gonna be we're gonna have Cade Anderson on the mound. Game one, assuming that Jay Johnston doesn't do something crazy, which I highly doubt. But you can't ever rule that out, because Jay is never going to tell you his pitching plan until an hour before we're first pitch. So in the postseason, assuming Cade Anderson and Griffin Kern are going to go at it, so you're going to have two lefties on the mound, against each other, and then. You look at Jack Carsonis, who, like you said, was not in the starting rotation to start the season, but they had their other number 2 starter kind of had some issues, gave up, some runs. And so, Carsonis kind of got thrust in there about 2/3 of the way through the season. And he's been really good for them, and he can go deep too. That the blueprint for West Virginia to win this super regional is to have they have to do it in 2 games, because if this goes to a 3rd game, the advantage heavily shifts to LSU, because West Virginia does not have a deep bullpen. I know LSU's bullpen is maybe not as deep as maybe some people thought, but there's a ton of talent in that LSU bullpen. Maybe, there's a ton of, let me say this, there's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of stuff on that LSU bullpen. It doesn't always get across the plate, but the stuff is there. West Virginia just doesn't quite have that. I mean, you mentioned how many pitches Griffin Kern threw in game 1 of the regionals last weekend. Well, he then came back a day and a half later and closed out the 3rd game, because that just showed, that just illustrates the point of how shallow this West Virginia bullpen is. The blueprint for them is to have Kern and Cartsonis go deep. I mean, go into the 8th, ideally maybe into the 9th inning, and have the game, I don't want to say well in hand, but be winning going into the late innings, and then be able to throw maybe a Carson Estridge who leads the team in saves, and he's got 5, but he's got 5 saves, but he's got an ERA over 6. So that's a guy that, maybe, there's another guy. They have Reese Basinger, who also has 5 saves, but he's got an ERA of 4.5. So, those aren't great ERAs for closers. Just that's the blueprint for them, is to win this in 2 games and to have Kern and Cartsonis go deep. So if you're LSU, take pitches.
Yeah.
Fight off, foul tons of balls off, right? Grind out at bats, run those pitch counts up, get deep into this West Virginia bullpen that is not deep. So that is your winning strategy for LSU.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was actually going to be my next question. But since you kind of hit the nail on the head with the bullpen, they only have 3. They have 3 guys that have had 20 appearances. But if you look at the rest of the pitcher rotation, the rest of the bullpen in general, not a whole lot of guys have gotten out of the bullpen and pitched in the games. And that just shows you just the lack of depth they have in the bullpen. And really, they're starting to get tired. I actually pulled this up. So Reese Basinger, as great as he has been, 29 relief appearances, a team high 5 saves. but he's given up 13 hits and a walk in his last 3.2 innings of the regional on Saturday and Sunday. Then you look at Chase Myers, who has had a solid year, 4.09 ERA, 9.2 on the year, 21 appearances, but he's given up 10 earned run in his last 8 Big 12 innings. So he's starting to wear down a bit. And also Carson Estridge, who also has 5 saves in the year. He's been fantastic out of the bullpen, but he also has a 6.14 ERA and has given up 8 home runs on the season. But moreover, he's given up 4 home runs in his last 4 appearances, and he's given 19 runs, 18 of which are earned, and 14 hits in his last 5.2 innings pitched. So this is not a deep bullpen, but not only that, their best guys of the bullpen have been struggling as of late. But last question to wrap everything up. What are your keys for LSU to pull off this victory? And also, what are 3 keys for West Virginia to come to Baton Rouge and upset LSU?
Yeah, I mean, for LSU, it's be patient offensively and take your hits and try and get, some big hits when you can and timely hitting. But grind out at bats, right? Get deep into this West Virginia bullpen, run those pitch counts up, see as many West Virginia arms as you can. And then have Anthony Ianson and Cade Anderson do what they've done all season, which is give you 7+ innings of, 2-3 run ball, and be ahead in the late innings and to go to Cowan and Evans and that back into your bullpen, to be what they've been, to be specifically Cowan, to be what it's been for most of the year. And so that's going to be, that's the roadmap for LSU. LSU obviously would like to do this in 2 games, but like I said earlier, if West Virginia is able to steal a game and this goes to a game 3, that game 3 advantage really heavily tilts to LSU, especially if they don't use Case and Evans and they're able to bring Case and Evans as a starter for game 3. For West Virginia, the blueprint is you got to get this in 2 games. You got to come in and sweep because your bullpen's not deep. So you need both your starters to give you, 7+, and then, have to use, your 2 or 3 best bullpen arms when you look at, Basinger, Meyer, and Estridge to get you. So basically use as few pitchers as possible and make the LSU pitchers work, run your offense, get the sack bunts, get them on, get them over, get them in, and get this series done in 2. But ultimately, I don't think that's what happens. I think what happens is LSU gets it done in 2 games.
I have to agree with you there, just because the way LSU's been hitting, you have the best pitching duo in the country, and also even though LSU has its issues in the bullpen, West Virginia has even worse issues in the bullpen, just given their lack of depth. At least LSU has a few solid guys you can turn to, and then also there might be some more guys that might turn to this series where LSU could trust. But Alex, where can people find you, whether social media, podcasts, maybe written articles, you name it?
Yeah, you can find me. My Twitter and Instagram handle is there on the screen right now at Radio Man Day. And then you can find me at collegebaseballcentral.net. I have some articles up there. And then the College Baseball Central YouTube channel, I have a weekly podcast that I do called Tiger Talk. And I'll be putting up my super regional preview tomorrow morning. Myself and then Mark Garland from College Baseball Central will be breaking that down. So yeah, that's where you can find me, and I appreciate you having me on, Grant.
Yeah, no problem, Alex. Anytime, man. I'm glad you can be back in Baton Rouge. We get to see each other in the person, probably the first time in 2 years, actually. But it's great to have you back, man. And also, thanks for hopping on the podcast on kind of short notice. And that was kind of right now we're in the middle of the night. It's 10:30 as we're posting this. So I'm glad you hopped on because I know you're gonna have a pretty busy weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, it'll be the first time. Yeah, I think 23, regionals, I think was the last time. Or no, I guess we saw each other in Omaha in 23.
We did, yeah. Omaha, yeah.
So, yeah, Omaha 23 is the last time we, saw each other face to face. So, yeah, that'll be good to catch up with you again. And, yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right, and you guys make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also click on the bell for any so you can get future notifications for videos like this, and of course, live videos or anything we may post on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.